All right, we're at San Diego Comic-Con at the DC Comics booth, and we're talking to Christopher Priest, the new writer for Deathstroke. First question is always the simple one of how you actually came onto the series.
Well, DC was doing the new Rebirth event. They wanted a really strong and talented writer for Deathstroke. They couldn't find one, so they asked me to do it.
So the character's been around for a really long time. For you, like, what do you see the character as?
Well, I had more or less been semi-retired from the business for a long time, and as a result, I really wasn't that familiar with the current version of Deathstroke. So when I got a call from Marie Javins to do the book, my point of reference was still Marv Wolfman and George Perez. So that's kind of how I see the character, and what we've done is we've kind of gone back to basics with the character and sort of updated it for 2016.
So you've been creating comics for the last 38, I was about to say 30-something years. And it's gone through like a huge change over the 30 years. Yeah. For you as a writer, like, what specifically has changed? I mean, clearly comics in 1980 is different than comics in 2016.
Well, for one thing, I think what's happened is that television has changed, and with television becoming more sophisticated and more realistic, it's spread throughout the mass market, into novels, into all different areas of publishing, and the audience has kind of now demands more from the reading material than they did, say, in 1980s or even the 70s and before that. So a lot of things that we could get away with before, we really can't now, because they go, well, how did the character get from point A to point B? So there's a lot more, the readers are kicking the tires a little more than now than they used to. So that's kind of it. It's just a much more sophisticated level of writing. It's much more detailed and much more challenging in a lot of ways.
Actually, it's kind of goes to my next question. So the characters appeared in live action on Xero specifically. I mean, does that factor in at all, that knowing that you're going to have people coming to the character from television that might have not ever seen the comic before?
Well, yes and no, because I think Rebirth kind of moved the character closer in some aspects to the TV show. We are moving the character closer to what Marv and George originally did. So he looks completely different than the TV show. He looks more like he did originally. And then what Jeff Johns and I discussed was designing the new series to be transferable to other media. So in other words, instead of a studio having to come in and do all this redevelopment, why don't we just make it TV or movie friendly in the first place? So a lot of that was factored into some of the creative decisions that we made.
So can you give an example of how that might be different? It's a conversation we have a lot with a lot of creators of, like, you know, why aren't you involved in the television or movie? And, you know, it's two totally different systems, it seems like, but it sounds like you're kind of planning for that big picture.
Well, hoping and praying is more like it. Thank you. But certainly we recognize the fact that a lot of these properties, they go to other media. They go to books and film and TV and straight to video and things like that. So it makes sense now that if you're developing a series for comics, that you develop it with that in mind. So that makes a lot more sense to me, I think.
So I feel like I have to ask you, you're one of the few, you know, people of color writing comics, especially for the big two. The character's white. Usually, you know, people of color write people of color characters. I hate to say it, but it seems to be the pattern lately. Is that play on your mind at all, taking over the character and writing for him?
Well, no, because now Deathstroke is a black woman, and it's a joke. No, it really doesn't. 25, 30 years ago, I was a writer. Right. I wrote Green Lantern for a long time. I wrote Spider-Man for a long time. The first act of Batman Begins, where he goes to the Tibet and he encounters the League of Shadows, that was based on some of my Batman writing from ancient years ago. Over the years, somehow I stopped being a writer and I became a quote-unquote black writer, which made me very unhappy, and that was part of the reason why I haven't been active in comics in quite a while. It's not that I don't want to write black characters. I'm part of the development team for Milestone Media, for Milestone 2.0. It's not that I don't want to do that. I just don't want to be limited in any way to that. So, in fact, the main reason why I said yes to Deathstroke was that it wasn't just another black character, and he's a villain. And I said, well, can I write him like a villain, or do I have to somehow do this uncomfortable dance that you guys have been doing, where he's a villain who does heroic things, or he's a villain with a heart of gold, or he's an anti-hero. You know, he's a villain. Get used to it. He's a bad guy. He's going to do crappy things. If you're not comfortable with that, let me just move along. You know, so for all those factors, that's why I'm here. But race played no role in it whatsoever.
So the question about the villain, because that's one of the questions I had, is I think he's one of the only villains that has a comic series for DC right now. I mean, how far of the villainy are you going to play? Because the character's kind of been a hero at times, been an anti-hero at times.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. So the character's kind of played that role like throughout the year. Sometimes he's been a villain, sometimes he's kind of been an anti-hero, sometimes he's just been a mercenary in kind of that gray area.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're going more back to the hardcore villainy when the character started.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I can say this or not. Can you bleep me out? Slade, you know, Deathstroke, he's an asshole, okay? He's a mean guy, and he does bad things, you know, and I'm not compromising any of that, you know, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. And DC, much to my surprise, they said, yeah, okay, you know, so we're writing him as a villain. He's a bad guy, you know, but he loves his children.
This is very true. So I think we're coming up on the 10-minute mark. Final question. So you've been working in comics for such a long time. So much has changed in creation process and fandom, and, you know, obviously internet technology is all really kind of caused it to, you know, leap forward in many ways, good and bad, over the last couple of years. For you as a creator, like, how does it feel to kind of see that over the years, and has that really changed how you create comics at all, or you even think about comics?
No, because I really wasn't paying that much attention. I was pastoring a church. Yes, I'm an ordained minister writing Deathstroke. Yes, thank you very much. I was doing a lot of working in ministry and just really completely unrelated to comics, writing novels, things like that. So I really haven't paid much attention. Now, when I came back, what I found is the pacing is different. A lot of the way they put these things together is different. So there's been a bit of a push-pull sort of relationship with Alex Antone, my editor, because I kind of write old school, and I'm kind of pushing back against this idea of, you know, you have a $5 comic and you've got a story you can read in 15 seconds, you know. So we're writing real stories. We're doing kind of done-in-ones, real solid things with continuing threads that connect them together. But you know, I kind of told DC, this is who I am. Thank you for your call, but this is who I am. And they said, okay, go be you. And I'm really grateful for that.
So any kind of final thoughts about coming back to kind of comics in a way and picking up on a high-profile character like this?
He's a high-profile character?
I consider him fairly high-profile.
See, I didn't know that. I just thought it was an interesting concept if I could write him the way I wanted to write him. It's very interesting, and for the first, I think, 2 or 3 months that we were working on this, I tried everything I could to get Alex to fire me, and just really irritating him and driving him nuts. It feels very weird to be doing this and to be here at the convention, but it's starting to become fun. I'm starting to get acclimated. You know, we'll see if I'm still here next year. How's that?
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.